What data is provided? Part 1. In this module, I will look at some of the key aspects of the CAT4 reports within the group report for teachers and the individual student report for teachers. This initial report provides useful distribution data for the school cohort compared to the national norm. Each battery is shown here. This gives an insight into whole school strengths and weaknesses compared against a national norm. One aspect to consider from this is resourcing. That is, how to enable creating learning groups for students with similar reasoning types as shown by the percentages within the various ability bands. The scatter graph report for the whole cohort gives a very clear visual representation of the student distribution, both in terms of actual standardized age score levels and the relative difference in spatial and verbal scores. This relative difference is used to classify students in terms of their learning bias. This bias forms the basis of the narrative report we will see in the individual student report for teachers. To ensure that an individual's bias is recognized, this report lists the names of students that fall within each of the 7 groups from extreme verbal bias to extreme spatial bias. Bullet points giving possible manifestations of the type of bias are also given here. Implications for teaching and learning are further explored in the individual student report for teachers. It is important here to remember that the bias must be considered alongside absolute standardized scores in the interpretation of student data. Here we can see benchmark indicators given for the core Key Stage 2 subject areas. For each subject area, the indicators in the first column represent the 50th percentile of performance, and the indicators in the second column represent the 75th percentile of performance level of students in the past with the same ability score. The 75th percentile level should be considered challenging, as only 25% of students with that ability score in the past reached that performance level. The GCSE indicators are created as previously described and are available for a wide range of subject areas. They are displayed here for the new number system, but are also reported as grades. The indicators are not targets in themselves, but when taken with a wider knowledge of the individual, give a very useful benchmark. Also available to you are the chance graphs as a further breakdown to these grades. Indicators for A2, A-level and IB are also available. At the top of the first report, in the individual report section, the area-headed scores gives data for all 4 batteries where the group report for teachers has concentrated on the verbal spatial bias. Quantitative scores may be of particular interest in relation to possible mathematical performance comparisons. Spatial ability scores may be of particular interest in relation to STEM subjects. The scatter graph gives the bias information for the individual student. The individual student report for teachers contains a very useful extended narrative section, describing the individual's particular bias and the implications for teaching and learning. This makes an excellent starting point in the process of personalizing learning, considering a student's cognitive strengths and areas for development. Or if using CAT4 as a placement assessment, this is a useful commentary to provide to class teachers as the student enters the school. An individual's indicators are shown here in the form of a chances table. This is an excellent way of ensuring staff and students understand that although indicators are given as a benchmark, they are not limiting, and outcomes are still heavily influenced by factors specific to the student.